Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Brown, and I'm the channel manager for Procore, covering the EMEA region, and we're delighted to have you all with us today. So the purpose of today's webinar is all about reclaiming your time. And what we believe is that one of the most important and impactful ways of doing that is to have better control of your project information. So I'm delighted to have with me some panelists. And today we have Frederic and Paul, as well as Manish and Rory. And I'm just going to hand over to each member of the panel just to give a brief introduction of themselves before we get started. So Frederic, do you mind if I pass over to you first?
No problem. My name is Frederic Lefebvre, so I'm a quantity surveyor with Mercury Engineering. Been with Mercury for 20 years now, and we are working on a very large healthcare project at the moment.
That's fine. Thank you so much. And I believe Paul is also a member of your team, so perhaps we'll go to him next.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's Paul Walshe. I'm a commercial manager with Mercury Engineering, in charge of the Irish Healthcare Division and this NCH project. As Frederic has said, there's a very large project with a very large amount of information flow. That's it.
Super, thank you. And Manish?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Manish Gajbe. I'm part of Wipro, which is a global IT consulting company. I'm leading as a partner for domain and consulting solutions within Wipro's engineering, construction, and operations vertical. The charter is to shape and deliver digitally led and consultative led solutions for our ECNO customer. And thanks, Andrea, for having me here, and looking forward to a very interesting discussion today.
Super, thanks so much. And today's event is being, I'm your host, but it's a joint event with Mail Manager, and I'm delighted to have Rory on from Mail Manager. Hi, Rory.
Hi guys, yeah, hi Andrea, hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Rory Armstrong. I'm the head of account management at Mail Manager. This webinar is in collaboration with Mail Manager and Procore. Mail Manager is a simple Outlook add-in developed by Arup, an add-in that Frederic and Paul have recently started using. It enables businesses to get control of their project information, and we've recently launched our integration with Procore, so we're really excited about that and being able to sort of enhance that through this discussion.
Super, thanks all so much. So just before we get started on a little bit of housekeeping, at the end of this event, we will be sending out an email follow-up with a copy of the recording. So if there's anybody that hasn't been able to attend that you'd like to pass it on to, please do. And there'll also be a number of reports that the Mail Manager team will be sharing with you. So please do keep an eye out for them. This is a closed webinar, so everybody will be on mute apart from the panelists and myself, but we would love you to put any questions or comments that you have for us in the chat. And then towards the end of the session, we will have a Q&A, and we'll be going through those questions that you've posted, and we'll decide who on the panel is best placed to answer those. So please do help us to make sure to feel that we're not alone and talking to four windows on this webinar. We'd love to hear from all of you. So let's get started. So the first question that I have for the panelists is that within the scope of a project, what level of importance would you place on managing project information? And in particular, we're thinking about things like documents. And I'm going to go to Paul first on that.
Yeah, I suppose information traveling through emails is actually is actually of critical importance to the scope of the work that we're doing on any project at the moment, from a large project to a small project. It's all about the dissemination of the information and how that can be done in a, like in a timely manner, to make people more efficient and to make sure that the work that is contained within the emails is actually acted upon, and it will prevent errors being made, specifications being approved in a timely manner, RFIs being approved in a timely manner. It's all about the management of emails at the moment, and to make sure that the information they contain is acted upon and is recorded. So really, it's of like critical importance, like to like particularly to construction companies where like buildings are being built now in as fast as time as possible. So it really is of critical importance to us.
Great, thank you. And Frederic, just to elaborate on that, when Paul talks about some of those issues that can come from not having access to that data, is there anything that you've seen that you could share with us around that?
Yeah, well, I suppose probably the reason we were led to Mail Manager in the first place, I have an example. We had a claim that we had sent in, I think it was in 2019, and the client didn't act upon it until 6 months after, and they came back to us asking for information. So I actually had to go back to 4 members of our team and try to get them to look through their emails from 6 months ago to try to be able to, establish a timeline of the claim and all that. And that proved very complicated because at the moment, like our process would be to, at the time it was that everybody was supposed to save their emails on the project file key. But obviously when you're dealing with hundreds of emails for each people every, week, it becomes very complicated to have all them emails saved. So it proves very, very challenging to actually being able to establish the timeline of that claim. Because I can talk about as well how the process, the way it is. Like we have 2 document controller on the project, and basically their job is to download all the new information from the common data environment. So they're using 4 projects on our project at the moment. So basically they're downloading, specs, drawings, RFI answers, and then once that's downloaded, then they will send an email to the whole team to say, well, this information has arrived, so that's new information. And then on the other side, I think they're also responsible to upload our information, so our shop drawings, RFIs, technical submission, and then again emailing that the information has been submitted. So we are dealing with hundreds of emails every week just on this. On the upload and download of information.
That's a great example, absolute perfect example to share. And I think that often people overlook that, right? There's systems like Procore that manage projects. You've mentioned Viewpoint for projects, whichever system you use. I think sometimes people overlook this little aspect that is email and how that gets handled. Manish, in the work that you do with Wipro, I know that you've got, a terrific industry background and a lot of experience here. What do you see in that? Is email something that's overlooked? How are people really taking a look at that in terms of controlling their projects?
Absolutely. The way we look at it is, and all of us should look at it at 2 levels. One is the process level, and second is the systems level. And the reason why we should look at it at that granularity is because larger or the smaller or the medium enterprises, whoever are in this business of AEC or engineering construction operations, predominantly there are two levels of systems. One is the data populator, where they populates the data or manage the data, design engineering systems or collaborations platform like Frederic mentioned, 4 projects or Procore or the likes of it. And second, which is a most common method of communication, which are emails. And predominantly we have seen that the intelligence which is extracted from these platforms to make certain decisions, the decisions are communicated via emails very often. So it is very, very important to have a bridge between the two systems in order to enable right set of intelligence and its back trail in case if it is required to establish a fact. And also it is very important to provide this as a part of your value engineering, arbitration, or for that matter any dispute resolution whenever and however it is required. So it is a most important aspect and very commonly overlooked, the correct bridge between your communication system and your data intelligence system.
Absolutely, thank you. Rory, you're sort of if we've articulated a bit of what the problem is, you're really our hope in terms of the solution. What is it that you see from the customers that you support in relation to that?
Yeah, so it's just following on from everything the guys have been saying. For us, it's about saving time and minimizing risk for our customers and clients. Everyone in this particular day and age could be quite used to having a saturated inbox, too many emails, and feeling quite overwhelmed. We believe that particularly with projects, that shouldn't be the case. And so from a mail manager perspective, our tool means that you get rid of the hassle of having to manage your own inbox. And when it comes to retrieving important project correspondence, you're able to pursue that with a degree of certainty that you're going to find what you're looking for when you need it. And that's what we believe is most important to project delivery being as efficient, as productive as possible.
And while I'm on with you, really looking at email specifically, why do you think that's so important when it comes to project delivery? And for the rest of the panelists, I'll be coming round to you with that same question in a second to give you a little time to prepare.
Well, so we believe sort of most detail in a project is really discussed and relayed over email. So there's a trail that obviously isn't paper anymore, but it's just an email trail of correspondence. It's really important to have a grasp and a grip on what's being said. And as Frederic said, with disputes or with claims, it's generally a question about who said what at what time and to who, and having a real understanding and grasp upon that at all times is of paramount importance, because you want to be focusing on delivering the project in the most efficient and effective way possible. And if you do encounter any speed bumps, or if you do need to collaborate with other members from other team or other members of your team, you're able to look through and have an overview of a project and understand project correspondence in just a few clicks, as opposed to having to rush around and other people potentially wasting time trying to piece together correspondence and paint a picture of what's actually happened.
Yeah, so Rory brings up a really important point there, and it's not that this can't be done in a different way. There was an old American commercial that said, can you breathe without a tic tac? You can, but we wouldn't recommend it. And this sort of reminds me of this. Can you do it without having a tool like Mail Manager? You can, but we're going to recommend that you have some sort of technology in place like Mail Manager to support that. So Manish, coming over to you, what do you see? And I mean, some of the hints that Rory gave there were around litigation and things. What do you see from the customers you work with in terms of a real consciousness about this almost next level of digital transformation?
Yeah, I consider this as a Uber moment where everything was there. Problems were there, people were there, and even their communication systems as well as their data management systems were there. But nobody thought to bring this as a catalyst in order to enhance productivity, enhance or reduce risks in their projects. And I think from a project delivery perspective, where there are so many uncontrollable things, and as Rory mentioned, it comes to a point where, it's someone's word against others. So it is very important to establish a digital trail of evidence and data in order to prove the point. So for me, this is an Uber moment within the AEC project delivery.
I love that, and I love Uber moment. That's going to be the catchphrase of the webinar today. Paul, coming over to you, I'm imagining that as a user of Mail Manager, you guys had your very own Uber moment when your aha when you said this is absolutely something that we need to do. Can you share with us in a bit more detail, perhaps, why email is so important for you guys in terms of project delivery?
Right. I suppose it follows on from what Frederic was saying there earlier on, that we had our Uber moment when we actually heard that there was like a piece of software out there that could be used like to help you find information, like amongst thousands and thousands of emails. And both Frederic and myself, like looking after the commercials on a project with 40,000 plus emails or something at the moment, and trying to find information, even the simplest of information that could have only been sent last week, like where we didn't have access to it, like through other people's emails, but we knew there was something out there. Somebody had responded to an email, but we didn't have access to it. That person was out of work for the day, like when we needed to get the information, or for whatever reason, but we needed to get it. And we knew it was there and we couldn't get our hands on it. And next thing we heard that Arab and like Mail Manager had a piece of software, and like we work closely with Arab, and we said, well, if it's good enough for Arab, like it should be good enough for us. And we said, let's go with it. And again, it's from the smallest project to the largest project. Like writing still exists, and that's what's called up in the contracts, that we have to write a letter. We have to give the client notice. We have to do like a lot of stuff in the old-fashioned form from a contractual point of view. But a lot of the engineers, don't really have to follow the contract, like when they're doing like technical submittals, when they're doing RFIs. All of that part of it is actually done through emails. So there's two aspects to it. Like we have the part going through emails, and then we have the part going through letters. So unless something is really critical, like they're of critical importance, and it's called up in the contract that it has to be a written letter, then that's what's done. But otherwise, every piece of information is sent through an email. So the backing up of or the email trail, or the the accountability trail, as Manish has said there, can all be established through emails, and that's why it's critically important that information is available and at hand, and that everybody's able to get at it to be able to support like the function of that department, like who needs access to the emails. So like emails are like the 21st century version of a letter. So very few people are writing letters these days. It's all emails, or like web seminars or WhatsApp or whatever, but it's generally all like digital background, not letters. So it's critical important for us that we can find all that information that our engineers have passed on and like given to the client that can support our case, like commercially.
Super, thank you. And Frederic, just coming over to you, what do you see as the main risks associated with bad email management? I know you touched on that a bit earlier, but if you could talk a bit more to that, that'd be great.
One of the big risks is the loss of information. So if we don't have, for example, our engineers would be dealing directly with the design team. We might not be CC'd on those emails, but that could have a critical importance in terms of a claim or a dispute. So if that information is not saved on the file key or somewhere, we want to have access to it, and we could lose a claim. The other side of thing is that if we could obviously be subject to a claim ourselves if we don't carry out the work based on the later set of drawing or specification. So we need that information to be very easily accessible. Contractually as well, in terms of instructions, like even though the contract may say that it has to be any instruction for or change order has to be written as a letter, we often know that that's not really the case on the job site. It may be a case that an email has been sent to a floor manager on site and say, well, can you move this or do that? So we need to be able to establish timelines on these type of changes as well. So being able to retrieve all that information in one spot is critical for us now.
Super, thank you for that. And Manish, same question to you in terms of that, the risks associated with bad email management. I mean, and I think that we all both probably have a dual view of this, as even the stuff that we see internally, right, within our own organizations. We're talking today from a construction perspective, but Mail Manager supports more industries than just construction. So I can think of examples of that. Can you talk to that in terms of your experience, not only with construction, but beyond?
Sure. So the obvious risks are, as Frederic mentioned, loss of data and loss of correct information in correct time. But beyond that, I think the most important aspect of bad email management is losing productivity, people's productivity. Simple email can save substantial amount of effort on certain tasks by the team. Availability of the right set of information within right time enable the construction companies or project oriented companies to deliver their project on time, on budget. So if the right information is not communicated in time, that's the major risks, that people overrun the cost, overrun the time schedules. From the different aspect of it, from the data and the data security aspect, not managing the right email and the content in it, first and foremost, gives a substantial amount of threat to the organization in terms of data breach, or not able to archive the right set of data. Second is loss of ability to extract intelligence. If the right set of emails are rightly archived or made available, organizations can run artificial intelligence routines, or write some MI or ML functions on it in order to extract intelligence on who decided what, how we have made the specific decision in our past projects, and can be leveraged for their future projects. So not managing the right emails with the right intelligence in it have multiple levels of risks and can be managed very easily, like with the Mail Manager.
Brilliant. And Rory, just over to you. What do you see from that?
Yes, so sort of following on with the risks of almost bad email management is that sort of every day you're having so much correspondence come your way, or maybe not an overload of correspondence, but there is always correspondence relating to a project coming into team members' inboxes, and having a level of control and of that filing process and searching process is only going to benefit the project delivery overall. If you have if you don't have an email management tool, or if you don't have a document management tool, you're going to be somewhat behind the 8 ball when it comes to managing your project as efficiently as possible, because all correspondence isn't ending up in the necessary place. It's not as accessible as quickly as you would like it to be, and ultimately there's almost time wasted on a simple process like email management and document management that I imagine most people within working on projects don't want to have to think too much about. And I think that's the most important thing from our perspective, is that we're taking away that stress and that concern from a process that isn't really shouldn't really be a focus for the experts working on projects. They should be able to retrieve documents and emails whenever they want, and they should have a filing process that takes away that stress and reduces that risk. So if sort of bad email management, going back to the question, almost means that experts are having to do jobs and roles and focus on matters that they really don't want to be doing.
Super, thank you. And that's the questions that I had for the panelists today. We have had a lot of questions come up in the chat, so I want to make sure that we get stuck into those and have enough time for them. So I'm going to jump into some of those questions. I will ask a panelist, but I'll always open each question up to everybody else, and if anybody else on the panel has anything else to contribute, please feel free to do so. So the first question that has come in is around litigation and disputes, and the question says, do you see Mail Manager as a tool that can lead to dispute avoidance as opposed to dispute resolution? And I think that's a really important differentiation, right? There's what you do once a dispute's already occurred, and some of the stuff that Frederic and Paul have talked about have been going back, right, and looking for those emails that existed 6 months ago. I think some of what we're talking about here with a tool like Mail Manager is proactive and possibly helps us to avoid a dispute happening in the first place, or at least it getting to litigation. So I'd love to hear, Manish, I'm going to start with you on that. If you see this difference in these tools between the dispute avoidance and dispute resolution.
Sure. I think this is great concept applied to almost every aspect of the project. You know, if you say operation and maintenance, you know, there is a reactive maintenance and then there is a predictive maintenance, or, you know, prescriptive maintenance, which we can use in order to save time, you know, and avoid things or mistakes to happen. I think it's a great concept to use tools like Mail Manager in order to avoid disputes instead of resolving it. But given the condition, you know, this is the fact of the time that there are instances where systems like this are not available. People are into major projects and have their data in a, you know, in a very disturbed stage. So in order to make them come onto this platform, leverage this platform, and, you know, get something out of it, this is the good time to get involved and extract benefit from this in a reactive way. And once they are okay with this, then for their new projects, they can avoid all their disputes, you know, because they will be more than ready to manage their data.
Perfect. And Paul, just coming over to you, can you talk to that a little bit as an organization? How valuable is it to have avoided a dispute in the first place, or have the ammunition with which to do so, as opposed to going down the path of having to resolve a dispute?
Yeah, I suppose it can, like the finding of emails and being able to produce emails, you know, like with information on them is, you know, it can lead to dispute avoidance, and equally like dispute, you know, dispute resolution. And we would have a lot of instances of those in particular on this project that we're on at the moment. Frederic and myself have been on it now for 4 years, and there actually has been a lot of like changes in management from the client point of view, and even from our own, you know, point of view to a lesser extent. And as we're all aware, when, you know, the contract negotiations are going on, like certain agreements are made that probably aren't like documented, which happened on our project. And when characters who, you know, like when the individuals who have made the agreements have left, but the email, but there's an email there to confirm the agreement, as in our case, the client's, you know, like representative, and we actually have it written into the contract that if there's an email or if there's been a question on a particular topic that has been raised before, that will like supersede what's in the contract if the information wasn't actually provided to us at the time. Kind of like an RFI, but on an email. So in our case, if we're able to produce that email during the early stages or the early part of like a compensation event, or like discussions about value engineering, if we're able to produce that email, then that is potentially that dispute avoided. And again, if we are already in a dispute and we can produce emails from the engineers or from the client's representatives, who have left the project, possibly the current client representative then will have to accept those as fact. And that is, proven to be the case on our project at the minute. If we can produce the information, then it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Rory, curious to hear from your perspective if male managers ever thought of themselves in that sort of way as dispute avoidance.
Yeah, so I guess it could be broken down into a couple of spaces. So for sort of our new customers, they maybe have wanted to bring us on board because they've had problems like this in the past. So it seems like somewhat of a reactive solution. But in the future, what it will provide them with is protection, because their projects are being delivered with good email management as a foundation. So ultimately, to sort of liken it to what we're all experiencing at the moment with the pandemic, you have sort of treatment for an illness, but also you have vaccination for future protection. So in some respects, Mail Manager provides you with that future protections to deliver projects as efficiently as possible, with the safe in the knowledge that if you ever experienced any type of dispute, you're already covered, because you're able to retrieve any bits of project correspondence whenever you require, because everything is been efficiently stored in the space it needs to be, but also able to be retrieved in just a few clicks. So I think initially for our new clients, there's a sort of reactive solution that Mail Manager helps, but it comes in as a reactive solution, but the general aim is to be that proactive protection, so that their projects are ultimately delivered as efficiently as possible.
Perfect. And just on that, you mentioned the pandemic. Have you seen from the customers that you support that email has become more or less important since the start of the pandemic?
Yes, it's a great question. So I think email naturally has actually become more important given the reduction in sort of office work. So you don't necessarily, you're not able to go over to the person sitting at the other desk to ask them to retrieve an email for you. You rely on being able to communicate with them remotely and then retrieving that email for you. So because more emails are flying around because of remote working, there naturally is more of an importance on making sure that correspondence is filed consistently, but also being able to be as accessible as quickly as you require it. So I think we've certainly seen from our existing clients before the pandemic, who were with us before the pandemic, they've really benefited from having a good tool already in place. But from the new clients that we've brought on board, that sort of need has come from the fact that emails become a more prominent part of their everyday workflow.
Sure. And Manish, just interested from your perspective, just since the pandemic, have you seen, and possibly even if it's not a change in email in particular, just a change in terms of the view of documentation within project management? Have you seen any change there?
Yeah, I think with all my clients, from the engineering construction segment, what I heard is, if we do not have this functionality to collaborate with our clients, with our subcontractors, with our vendors digitally, using our communication email systems or other platforms to collaborate, like what we are doing, this industry would have failed, wouldn't have been able to cope up. That's a true feeling which I have got. So yes, it is very, very important aspect of people working remotely and enabling the same amount of data exchange, SLA exchange happening within their projects. So during the pandemic situation, it came out even more stronger, as a enabler to deliver the projects.
Yeah, perfect. And just moving on to you, Frederic, I'm interested just to hear, there's a question that came in that around document and email, to this idea that, is it a best kept secret? Does the industry understand that there are solutions out there, or do most people just think that these are problems and challenges that you just have to cope with? Can you talk about that sort of, was it a nice surprise when you suddenly discovered there was something that could support you with this?
Yeah, it definitely was, I suppose. Yeah, like it's not something that we really had thought about before. And it's kind of, it all came about, the claim I spoke about earlier on. I had to go back to 4 or 5 people and asking them to go through 6 months of email and finding the information. And I was saying, like, there has to be a better way, because, this was early on in the project. It was a small claim, but we know well that as the project goes on, the risk of dispute is only going to increase. And if we don't save the information properly, we risk losing those claims we're well entitled to. And using your Outlook as a filing cabinet is not good enough, and you can't really blame people either for not saving every email, because this is a job in itself. Like, we're talking hundreds of email for everybody every week, so you can't save everything on a file key. It takes too much time. So I suppose it was a nice surprise. I came about Mail Manager in a webinar such as this one, actually, and I actually didn't know anything about it before. And when I saw the solution there being proposed, I said, well, we'll definitely will look into that, because that sounds like a good idea. And it has proved. Now, we've only been working with this for the last 5 months, I think now. With 40,000 emails saved since then, so you can see that, the volume that we're talking about, and the project is meant to run on for another 3 years. So, we're going to be in the hundreds of thousands of emails by the time the project is over. So it was definitely a nice surprise to get a system that would help us that way,
Super, thank you. One of the questions that has come in is just asking that people and businesses communicate in over different vehicles today. So where they can, I know even at Procore we use Slack, we use email, I use WhatsApp. So where you have communications that are spread over lots of different vehicles. I mean, I'm a bit old school, so I'm still using my Outlook, but Procore's a Gmail house, so I have both running at the same time with 2 lots of folders. So all sorts of things going on there. But sometimes it's not that simple, right? Sometimes in terms of the communication and documentation, we're using different vehicles to house that information. Rory, is that something that you guys come across, and how challenging is that? And can you give us a little bit of insight into what organizations should do? Should there be, for example, remits that say that, or edicts, sorry, that say that certain communication should only be by email or should only be via certain vehicles?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic, because obviously there's so many different methods in which to communicate by, and email, some respects, potentially before the pandemic could be seen as somewhat outdated, but now it's pretty much a necessity when it comes to project delivery. I think generally it depends on, or from our perspective, email is obviously probably seen to be a more formal way of communication. So from informal conversations that maybe happen in different vehicles of communication, it tends to be from our clients that they seem to sort of summarize what's been discussed in those informal settings in a bit more of a formalized way in an email. So as much as those different vehicles allow you to communicate without having to, be in your inbox and essentially flood your inbox with those informal dialogues. A simple summary to sort of, recap everything that's either been concluded, discussed, or actioned upon with a simple formal email allows you to then have that the informal or the results of the informal conversations actually in your project sort of correspondence folders, so that you can locate that whenever you require it. So I think it's a really interesting topic, because there are so many different ways to communicate. What we found and how we're able to sort of lean into that is that from a project delivery perspective, a more sort of formal summary sort of email that sort of summarizes that informal dialogue and discussion tends to be the way that most of our clients and customers combat that as an issue.
I think that's great, and I would, something that I possibly wouldn't have thought of. Maybe sometimes you do it accidentally, but I wouldn't have thought about it in that way, and what a difference that can make, right, to pull all of those communications in together. Well, that concludes the questions that we've had in the chat today. I just want to open it up to the panelists, just go around one more time just to see if there's anything that you want to add or talk to that hasn't been mentioned so far. Paul, I'll start with you.
No, I don't think I have anything to add really, other than what I just said. It is, like the finding of the mail management system for us was, like an excellent solution to a problem that we were very frustrated with, and hopefully it'll do. Well, it has done, what it says on the can, basically, that it is going to help to solve us in finding information going forward.
Super. Frederic, anything to add?
Yes, well, I mean, I suppose we've been talking a lot about claim and potential dispute, but even going on this side of the of what Mail Manager provides, I think as well the search option in Mail Manager, even internally in terms of what has been said to who in our own team at any point, is very helpful as well. The search engine is brilliant, and that makes a big difference as well. Without talking about dispute with the client or anything like that. So there is multiple use of Mail Manager, I suppose.
Thank you. And Manish?
No, I think in true sense, when we talk about digital transformation for project delivery companies, this stands out as one of the aspects of their digital transformation in true sense, solving a lot of problems, giving them or enabling them to leverage the intelligence of the system. And also this is to be seen at a very collaboration level, where as you mentioned, there are multiple channels of collaboration these days. The way to look at it is from the data perspective. Though the channels are different, the data has to be one or unique, as stored in your cloud and can be accessed through different multiple modes. And then if it is applied to that level, then it ultimately solves the overall problem, either of the mode. So I think, this is one of the key aspects of the digital transformation to solve their problems. And I'm really keen for the industry and looking forward to see how they are having their Uber moments in their own organizations with this.
Wonderful. And Rory, just coming to you. So, there's a Procore and Mail Manager integration. And one of the things that we believe is that a lot of the problems that people see in construction is by having solutions that exist in silos that don't talk to each other, and that where you pull all of that information together on one platform or in one place or on different places but that are connected and talk to each other, you then have the ability to really have that true safe communication and collaboration. Can you just close by telling us a little bit about your thoughts around that and how you think those two things together really make a difference?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, with obviously our Procore integration, we believe that each project should have the strongest foundation possible for successful delivery. And from a Procore perspective, an incredible document management tool, we ensure that every bit of correspondence required to end up in Procore ends up there, and that allows for businesses, companies, and project teams to be able to deliver their projects as efficiently, as effectively as possible, and setting yourself up for success with a strong foundation around document management and email management, we believe is at the forefront of successful project delivery. And like you say, there are so many different sort of systems out there, and for us to be able to integrate and with Procore allows us to be able to provide an offering to customers, clients that they can actually provide themselves with a really strong and stable foundation to deliver projects to the highest possible standard.
Super, thank you. Well, as I mentioned at the top of the call, ensure that a post-meeting email with some additional correspondence and information goes out to all attendees. Please feel free to forward that on to anybody that you know who may find this topic of interest or who missed the call today. On behalf of myself and all of my panelists, Manish, Frederic, Paul and Rory, thank you all so much for joining today. It was our pleasure to host you and this webinar, and that concludes today's call. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.